Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I've given, now I sing and I love, I am free.
Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment join in music to set hearts aflame. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I've given, now I sing and I love, I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment join in music to set hearts aflame. All my sorrows, all my merriment join in music to set hearts aflame.
I once attended an Education for Life workshop led by Usha Dermond, one of the longtime teachers and administrators in our Education for Life system. And because joy is one of the hallmarks of that system, and because education is a subject that's so often thought of as some kind of serious thing that demands earnest attention, Usha really made sure to set the tone at the outset of the workshop by first having us all stand up, and then she brought out this mystery garbage bag and she unloaded it, and it just had a bunch of balloons in it. And she threw them up in the air and gave us the instructions to keep them in the air just by bouncing them up with our hands and our feet and however we wanted to do that. And it was a wonderful experience because within seconds, really, at least half a minute or less than that, the energy in the room had just changed radically from one of this serious expectation to one of just lighthearted fun, the kind of atmosphere in which it was then appropriate to talk about an all-rounded educational system for children that served body and mind and feeling and will all together, as well as helping to awaken each child's inherent spiritual nature, where that would all be fully nurtured. Similarly, Swami Kriyananda in his book, The New Path, shares the story told by another disciple, Louise Royston, about Yogananda's early lectures in America. And she said how Yogananda was so alive with the divine joy that he'd come running out onto the lecture platform with his hair streaming behind him and his robes flapping around and just everything enthusiastic about him. And that's where he would shout, "How is everyone?" And everyone would reply, "Awake and ready," in which he led them. "How feels everyone?" "Awake and ready." And as Kriyananda relates, he says, only in such a charged atmosphere was he willing to talk about God, whom he described as the most dynamic, joy-inspiring reality in the universe. Dry theoretical lectures were not for him. He had not come to America to philosophize, but to awaken in people an ardent love for God, an urgent longing to know Him. The forceful, inspiring personality of this teacher from India utterly captivated his audiences. Yogananda, in short, just like Usha was doing in that workshop, he broke attendees' expectations of hearing a serious spiritual discourse of some kind by instantly changing their energy from one of that seriousness or earnestness into something much more attuned to God consciousness. And truly, most if not all devotees who have come to the spiritual path have similarly experienced moments of that kind of heightened spiritual awareness, especially when you first come onto the spiritual path and you feel this just wonderful sense of liberation from all the burdens and pressures that you felt in a life without God. And so this song, I Wander With Thee, Swami Kriyananda wrote it to express that same moment in the life of St. Francis where his father had been challenging him with wanting to run the family business and all this kind of stuff, and St. Francis just throws off all his clothes and dedicates himself in that moment wholly to God. And the song then delivers that newfound sense of freedom, right? And let me just repeat it here. We have Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. All that I owned to thee I've given, now I sing in thy love I am free. The song is very much a dance in this way, and with that same spirit of bouncing balloons, you then have the second verse. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriments join in music to set hearts aflame. One thing I should note is in the recording that you just heard and the one we'll have at the end, which were made a little while ago, there's the word in there that says, flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy. And in his later years, Ananda changed that word seem to the word are. Flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. I don't have a good recording of that, those words yet. But really the change here is subtle, but it's very important because it's saying that God's reality, God's joy is the underlying reality of creation other than, apart from the so-called seeming of Maya or delusion. So to say flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy makes it part of delusion, but to say they are alive with that joy says that the joy, again, is that underlying reality. Now, the energy of the song here is very much at the throat chakra, especially to begin with, which is the center of expansion, helping one rise beyond the merely personal concerns and to feel that greater sense of oneness with everything. Dancing in thy name is akin to dancing in thy word, dancing in Om, dancing in the vibration of creation. And even that phrase, I wander with thee, implies a sense of omnipresence, doesn't it? That I'm with God, and how can you really wander when you're omnipresent? You know, there's not wandering, you're just really sensing different things amidst all of creation. And the second lines of both verses share that same thought. Flowers and fields are alive with thy joy, as well as birds and animals share in thy song. There's that constant sense of oneness flowing through the song. But even more importantly is that line, all that I owned to thee I've given, because that's a statement of self-sacrifice, or if you will, a statement of renunciation, that loosens any blockages that might be here at the center of ego in the medulla, allowing the energy from that throat chakra to then flow upwards toward the brain. And that renunciation can, of course, refer to material possessions, which is the context of the story in St. Francis's life, but more deeply, it refers to that renunciation of the ego, again centered at the medulla, which in a subtle way it suggests the letting go of any ownership of all the energies in the spine, all the energies especially in the lower centers, allowing them to flow upwards. That line, all my sorrows, all my merriments, refers to those energies, I think, of the different chakras, where the sorrows is about energy that's going downward, and the merriments refers to the outward flowing energy through the senses in the expectations of emotional joy as opposed to inner joy. But when those energies are then directed inward and upward, as we're taught with yoga, then we set the hearts of each chakra aflame with the music of divine ardor and helping them flow into that expansiveness of the throat chakra and then upward to the brain into that spiritual eye, drawn by the divine love. In thy love I am free. It enlivens the brain and enlivens one's consciousness. Now, in this way, the song has a very similar effect to When You Come From Napoli that we talked about in these sessions some time ago, to overcome the qualities of mental dullness. Energy in the brain certainly overcomes that kind of dullness and just dullness in general. And Ananda, in fact, assigns this song to day 18 of Secrets of Emotional Healing along with When You Come From Napoli. So he has two songs for the same saying. And let me repeat that one here. He said, the secret of overcoming mental dullness is to train yourself to say yes instantly whenever your impulse is to grumble and cry no. Welcome life in all its variety and challenges. Like the petals of a daisy, keep your heart open to life's experiences. Overcome within you the tendency to rejection and withdrawal. Dullness, we can really say, is a state of almost being barely conscious, right? Or perhaps being in such a mental rut that you aren't even aware of the dullness itself. But by dancing, by juggling balloons, by really doing anything that seems just like pure, innocent, pointless fun, you bring energy to the brain, bring energy to your body, and shake off that heaviness, help you feel that energy, that you feel alive again, like it says in that one chant. What is this life flowing through my veins? What is this energy flowing through my form? Can it be other than divine? Now, as with when you come from Napoli, I Wander with Thee works well to overcome any negative quality that expresses a lack of enthusiasm, like boredom and apathy and indifference and disinterest and lethargy. St. Francis really epitomizes that openness of heart that allows the enthusiasm to flow, to fully accept whatever God placed before him without trying to think about it too much or rationalize it or somehow question it, but to really just accept it. You probably know that quintessential story in his life where he was in the little chapel of San Damiano and heard God speaking to him saying, "Francis, rebuild my church." And Francis, of course, was thinking, I should just rebuild this chapel. And he started doing that, not realizing at first, as he learned later, that what God's real instruction was to help revitalize Christianity itself. But he didn't need to think about those possibilities in that moment. All he needed to do was to accept that this is what's in front of me. And all that thinking would have just become something of an obstacle. But by being open to God in every moment, he didn't worry about the details. He needed only to apply his energy to the next step that was in front of him and then let God guide the steps that followed. In this way, the song really has a deep consciousness of simplicity as well as trust, and I'll talk about both of those qualities. As far as simplicity is concerned, you may remember that saying of Sri Yukteswar where he said, "God is simple, everything else is complex." A wonderful statement, isn't it? And that kind of simplicity, what it does is counteract the downward pulling consciousness of complexity, which is really the tendency to make everything harder or more difficult than it needs to be. And this is why when you hear the song performed, it's typically with a very simple guitar accompaniment, like I was playing, just "Father, now that I wander with Thee." It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. And in fact, if you make it more complicated, then it takes away from the simplicity of the song, counteracting it in some ways. And I also like that a simple strum like this, it doesn't have many expectations. So it's something that even a newcomer to the guitar, somebody who's just learning it, can actually pick it up and sing this song in all its simplicity and enjoy that simplicity even in the guitar accompaniment. Now, where trust is concerned, the deep trust that's in this song, that deep trust in God, also gives rise to an inner joy along with that mental vitality, which overcomes a sense of joylessness, right? Or that kind of grim outlook that focuses on obstacles or the difficulties that might lie ahead. I like to think of this song, I Wonder with Thee, as if you've been in a room with really stagnant air for a long time and you open a window and get that fresh breeze, it just overcomes that sense of stagnation, that sense of heaviness. Or it's like if you've ever gone camping and you've been inside a tent on a warm day with the sun shining on it, it gets fairly warm and stuffy inside. And then if you go outside of the tent, even if it's still hot, on the outside it's still refreshing because there's just this fresh air and you get this exhilarating sense of just freedom and so forth. The trust here also, with that sense of freedom, brings together with it a sense of safety and security, overcoming that general sense then of insecurity, right? That trust in God that everything will turn out fine is very secure. And this is why I think I mentioned that quality of financial insecurity, because so often we place our trust in money rather than in God. It's like that story in Autobiography of a Yogi at the beginning of the chapter, Two Penniless Boys in Brindaban, where Yogananda is talking to his elder brother Ananda. And Ananda is saying, it would serve you right if Father disinherited you because you're just foolishly throwing your life away. And Yogananda says, well, I seek my inheritance from the Heavenly Father. And his brother replies, money first, God can come later. Who knows, life may be too long. And Yogananda just replies saying, God first, money is his slave. Who knows, life may be too short. And he says after that my retort was summoned by the exigencies of the moment and held no presentiment. Yet the leaves of time unfolded to early finality for Ananta. A few years later he entered the land where banknotes avail neither first nor last. The rest of the chapter, as you probably know, Two Penniless Boys in Brindaban, is that wonderful account of Yogananda's just complete faith that God will provide in every moment. And as he says shortly thereafter in the same chapter, he says, God can devise for his devotee 1,000 resources besides the begging bowl. And so this is the spirit of St. Francis that's so wonderfully conveyed in this song, I Wander With Thee, that on the surface appears to be very simple, but through its energization of the brain, its opening of not just the heart chakra, but of all the chakras, right? Set hearts aflame, right? The song provides a delightful way not only to get out of our mental ruts and out of lethargy, but to enliven that sense of carefree dependence on God alone. The piece we'll enjoy now is Swami Kriyananda singing this song. It's from, I think, his album An Evening in Italy, and he sings it both in Italian, which would have been St. Francis's language, as well as English, so we can enjoy that now.
Ora, Padre, che vivo in te, fiori e alberi cantano d'amor. Niente è mio, è tutto tuo, vivo in te nella libertà. Ora, Padre, che danzo in te, festeggia tutta la terra con me. Tutti i fratelli miei s'uniscono per lodarti, o nostro Signore. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy. All that I owned to thee I've given, now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. Ora, Padre, che vivo in te, fiori e alberi cantano d'amor. Niente è mio, è tutto tuo, vivo in te nella libertà. Ora, Padre, che danzo in te, festeggia tutta la terra con me. Tutti i fratelli miei s'uniscono per lodarti, o nostro Signore. Tutti i fratelli miei s'uniscono per lodarti, o nostro Signore.